Let's use our properties of continuity to figure out whether combined functions are continuous. So would you say e to the x plus e to the negative x over 2 is continuous? You might say, who cares about that? That's actually something interesting called hyperbolic cosine. I'll tell you more about that in a different video, or you could look it up. So is this a sum of continuous functions? Well, it's a sum of continuous functions. E to the x is continuous, e to the negative x is continuous, and then we're dividing by something that is not a never going to be divided by 0. So yep, we've got continuous function plus continuous function divided by a non-zero. We said the quotient of continuous functions is always continuous as long as that denominator is not 0. So this is a continuous function. How about 1 over 1 plus x? Well, 1 is a constant, which is continuous, over a polynomial. Polynomials are continuous, but the polynomial can be 0. So this is continuous except at x equals -1, where the divide by 0 would happen. How about 1 over 1 plus x squared? That's something that's useful in some theoretical probability. It's basically what's called a Cauchy distribution. It looks a lot like a bell curve, but it's not the fundamental bell curve. So that's a constant over a polynomial. But the polynomial can never be 0. Because x squared is always positive or 0. Add 1 to that, you're always going to be at 1 or above. So 1 plus x squared is always bigger than 1, never 0. So this function is always continuous. How about e to the negative x squared? That's an exponential of a polynomial, a continuous function of a continuous function. And there's no danger cases like I talked about in the other video. So that's continuous. That is basically the classic bell curve in statistics. And then how about sine of the quantity 15 plus sine 3t times t? First of all, who would care about that function? It's kind of interesting to think about. Usually whatever's multiplying the t is the frequency. Here the frequency itself is changing cyclically. So this is what we might first think of as frequency modulation. We're changing the frequency cyclically or systematically as we go along. So this is a naive idea, meaning it's the first idea I had. That turns out not to be right. Naive idea of how FM radio works. FM means frequency modulation, that you're modulating or changing the frequency. I'll talk to you some other time about how it really works. But is this function continuous? Well, what do we have? T is a continuous function multiplied by a continuous function, and then a continuous function of that. So it's a continuous function of the product of continuous functions. And none of the danger cases I talked about in the other video about when you have a continuous function of a continuous function. So product of continuous functions is continuous. So overall, this is continuous. So that's how we can use thinking about properties of individual continuous functions and combining them to decide that other functions are continuous.